Hi, everyone, and welcome again to a regular episode of MedCityNews.com's MedHeads broadcast. I am Chris Sepper. I run MedCityNews.com, and I am joined in true baller fashion at the American Airlines Admirals Club at O'Hare Airport about to jet off for an assignment. Neil Versell. Neil, how are you doing?
I'm completely balling with my free water today.
Nothing says ballers like free water. Well, anyway, we
Yeah.
have this week, as we do every week, we touch on some of the most important topics in healthcare innovation, and we're going to talk about health policy because we had a pretty important development come near the end of this week. Right, Susanna Fox, formerly of Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, formerly of Pew, has ascended to the Chief Technology Officer position at Health and Human Services. Neil, can you catch us up?
Yeah, it's an announcement that I just caught on Twitter late yesterday and got a quick story up. I think a few of her close friends knew ahead of time, but I'm not one of those close friends. I think she's friendly with everybody, but she has her circle. Yeah, Susanna Fox was named the CTO of HHS. She put up a blog post on the HHS, one of many HHS blogs. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold here, so if I sound stuffy, that's my excuse. On the Idea Lab blog, in fact, something I didn't even know existed before yesterday. She had been, since last fall, the entrepreneur in residence at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Said that the offer basically said she didn't want to leave there, but the offer was too good to pass up, and she, in pretty much her first, her one of her first statements said that. Did we did we lose? Okay, we're back. Okay, I just got us. I noticed that Flash had crashed, but we're not using Flash. But anyway, she said she's touting the data liberación strategy that the first federal CTO or the first HHS CTO, later the federal CTO Todd Park, uh, created called data liberación, open health data for all, making as much data available from the vast federal storehouses to the public, so entrepreneurs and others can try to mine it, try to look for patterns, and maybe build apps around it. So that's her. She's been. I would say absolutely prolific when it comes to social media. She has something like 21,000 Twitter followers and has tweeted more than 20,000 times over the years. Contrast that to Todd Park, who I thought was a big social media guy. He seems like he tweets about once a month.
Well,
So she's
once you
really.
leave federal service, no one really loves you anymore.
That's
Well,
true.
Neil, let me ask you this question. I mean, when it comes to kind of carrying the hopes and dreams
Right.
of healthcare innovators, how important is that CTO position at HHS?
In many ways, it's a cheerleader position, just like the national coordinator position was prior to in the early days of ONC, prior to the High Tech Act, putting a lot of money behind it. In some ways, it's probably not relied on enough. The CTO really wasn't in place, and that was one of the many reasons why the health.gov failed, is that the chief technology officer wasn't really taking any leadership on making sure this works. They sort of turned it over to the contractors and let it go. And somebody with the title of chief technology officer for the whole department should be the chief technology officer for the whole department. And that's one of the many failings, I think, of healthcare.gov, is that there was no accountability when things started breaking down.
So,
So
yeah. So what would you like to see,
mhm.
this evolve to? And is there is it simply the bully pulpit like Todd used, or is there an opportunity for Susanna to do other things? And what would you like to see her do?
Well, I think there is. I think there hasn't been a whole lot of coordination between the CTO and perhaps some of the regulations around healthcare technology that have come out of other parts of HHS, and I'm thinking specifically about meaningful use. Even though Todd was in regular contact with ONC, with the people at ONC, with the leadership at ONC, I don't think, and more recently Brian Sivak, I don't think a lot of what Susanna has said doesn't quite match what we've been seeing in the meaningful use regulations in terms of open data. Now I know the stage 3 proposal for meaningful use has called for greater use of APIs, but as far as breaking down the silos and creating more interoperability and getting more patients engaged, and one of Susanna's things has been patient engagement. She is really tight with the empowered patient movement, with the Society of, with all the people who were making noise at the HIMSS conference a couple of months ago when when CMS proposed watering down the patient engagement part of meaningful use stage 2. Those are her people, and I would really like to see her work more closely with ONC and with CMS. And the meaningful use regs do come out of CMS officially in trying to coordinate a lot of those things to make the statements match what the policy really is. And
Well,
we're seeing the we've seen CMS kind of side with the providers and the vendors and not with the disruptors.
so is that operation number one? I know obviously at HIMSS there was a big
Yeah,
discussion about
right.
how meaningful use had changed when it
Mhm.
came to consulting patients and patient organizations.
Yeah.
Would you think for the betterment of healthcare, is that job one for her?
Well, I think job one for her. I think the timing of this announcement may not be a coincidence. I'm on my way to DC this weekend because Health Data Palooza starts on Monday. I'm just going a little early. Health Data Palooza was the brainchild of Todd Park when he was the CTO. Um, Susanna has regularly been a speaker at it. I haven't seen her name on the schedule, but I'm sure she's going to be a visible presence there now that she's got an official role, and she's probably going to be at least giving us some hints as to where she's going to take this job. Because she is brand new, but it's going to be her first public appearance as CTO. Is going to be essentially the face of Health Data Palooza. I assume she'll be doing a lot of the hosting duties at the beginning and the end of the day. Known out there, but I would like to see more. I think that this open data movement, this data liberation movement, needs to be a higher priority in greater health HHS policy, including meaningful use, and some of the other programs that are out there.
It's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned data liberation and health data palooza. I mean, I have to say, it looks like the health data revolution has kind of packed it up and moved to the suburbs, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you look at some of the things that happened. You look at what happened with meaningful use.
yeah,
You look at what's happening with the Department of Defense's EMR program, where it looks like Epic's going to win that, and they kind of rejected Peter Levin's idea of an open source record program that would have served the revolutionaries so well.
right.
Athena Health is still a force, but it's starting to, really the test now will be over the next 12 to 18 months about whether, their strategy can really hold ground.
Right.
You know, Susanna, for those who are advocates of the revolution, she seems to be the one that would be able to bring it back and spark it.
I would think so. I would think so. I would really like to see that. I think that the API component, the fact that ONC and that CMS have embraced the notion of the open API gives the revolutionaries a bit of a foothold, but they're still not running the show.
And so, you talked about the CTO as more of a bully pulpit. I mean, who's the most
Yeah.
important person when it comes to healthcare IT in the federal government? I mean, who's that person that we should be looking for? It used to be Todd Park because he was, he was
Yeah.
obviously very active and like I said, a bully pulpit kind of guy. But
Yeah.
who's that most important person when you think
And
about
by
the
the
federal
way,
government?
he was one of the co-founders of Athena.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
he comes from that background. Right now, it's hard to say because Karen DeSalvo is on her way out of ONC because she's been nominated to be Assistant Secretary for Health and is going to move more into a public health role. She's still running ONC until the Senate takes this up, and probably the Senate won't take it up for a while. I don't think it just doesn't seem like a priority right now to get
Hmm.
it up. she's kind of stuck, for better or for worse, with this lame duck status. I haven't heard much from Sylvia Burwell about health IT, so I don't really know where she stands in terms of health IT. So um, I don't really know who the most important person in the federal government is with health IT. Maybe somebody over at the VA at this point, because things are so much in flux.
Well, let's shift gears because I think. Well, let me say this: if you were to say, and with election coming up, who knows how long that this appointment could last, right?
Yeah.
But let's say a year goes by.
Now
Susanna
this is
Fox.
now this now this isn't a political appointment, so she doesn't need
Oh,
to be confirmed. She takes the job right away. It could be though that the next administration wants to bring in somebody else, or even kill the CTO job. But it seems like she's going to have this job at least through the end of the Obama administration in January 2017. So, year and a half.
well, so let's go
Yeah,
a year and a half and
yeah.
say, Susanna Fox is a success as CTO of HHS by 20. You can judge her year and a half as a success at HHS if what?
I think if there's sort of more, we start hearing more about this data revolution, data liberation, and we start to see open data really happening in healthcare for patients, and not just in the hallowed halls of academia.
Well, but I mean, we can hear more about it, but what's the
Yeah.
tangible deliverable now? Is it more patient involvement? Is it a more open source way? Is it a more bigger mandate on interoperability? Is it more money
I,
for early stage innovations? I mean, what's
I
that
would say,
bellwether deliverable?
yeah, yeah. I would say interoperability has to be has to be not the end game, but the way to get to the end game is the triple aim of safer care, better population health, and lower costs. That's the end game for all of this. I think interoperability is a major component that needs to be solved one way or another, and it might be solved at the entrepreneur level rather than at the enterprise level. Uh, yeah, if more patients want to be engaged. I'm still not convinced that they're going to be engaged to the level that, say, Farzad expects them to. I know that Regina Holiday had a paint-in at HHS last week that only drew a couple of dozen people. She will be a big presence, though, at Health Data Palooza. Again, this is her crowd. She and Susanna are kind of compatriots. A lot of the empowered patient leaders are going to be there. In fact, Susanna has written and spoken about how she was she was influenced by Tom Ferguson, who was the late Tom Ferguson, who was the leader of the sort of the father of the empowered patient movement back in the 90s. So she is completely on that team. I think another talk of just giving patients a personal health record and say compile your data. That's just not going to do it anymore. I mean, we've seen this movie too many times. There does have to be, maybe she will be able to uh, get CMS to back off that rolling back the stage 2 uh, recommendation. And really the only people who like the one patient part of it are the providers, so that who feel like, okay, we don't need to try that much anymore, just need to do the bare minimum just to show that it works. It can be done. You just have to want to do it. And I think there's a culture change, and I think maybe somebody like Susanna can help lead that culture change. On the other hand, she's in many ways a Washington insider, and people in the real world don't listen to Washington insiders that much. So,
Zing! I
so,
love
so
that,
I'm
Neil.
kind of a lot. Well, I used to be a Washington insider myself. I'm headed back to my hometown.
Well,
So,
let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk
yeah,
about that. I mean, I think that hearing you, I think it really has a good, clear outlook on what Susanna
yeah,
Fox has to do to
yeah.
be
I mean,
successful in
I
the
mean,
work she's
honestly,
got cut out.
to answer your question, I really can't answer your question at this point. It's a tough question. I really don't know. I would like to know who's really in charge, who's really setting the direction of health policy, of health IT policy at HHS, because right now it's not all that clear given Karen DeSalvo's current situation, and given a lot of turnover at ONC, and given the fact that CMS has proposed rolling things back on stage 2, yet moving to APIs on stage 3. So we're getting a lot of mixed messages.
So let's switch gears. I mean, obviously, there's one thing that we do. We just talked about Susanna Fox. What we also want to talk about to close out MedHeads is really talk about what other stories we thought were some of the most important of the week. So Neil, I'll go first. What I really thought was interesting this week, and I'm going to call it up, is that Google Ventures kind of sounded off and talked about what some of the big things that they were really interested in here.
Right.
And I thought that was fascinating, quite frankly, to see so clearly. I think, no matter what their batting average, no matter how good or not good they are in healthcare, it's fascinating to see Google Ventures kind of outline their priorities, because I think a lot of people will quickly follow what Google does or look to what they're doing about priorities. And they had everything from oncology solutions and beyond on their list. What impressed me was its breadth and a continued significant look toward the life sciences and well beyond technology. Most of obviously their solutions are going to be technologically enabled, but there's some real moonshots in there, and there's opportunities to solve some of the bigger problems in the life science side. And that's actually what I enjoyed reading that piece, and it's definitely drawn a lot of attention, a lot of conversation this week. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it or give it a read yourself.
I heard a little. I did catch a little bit about it. Yeah.
And so, well, what about you? What struck you beyond our talk on health IT and health policy here? What were some of the things that you thought interesting?
Yeah, well, the week started, I was absolutely incensed on Monday evening, Memorial Day, when I was just reading over my messages and sort of getting back into the swing of things, to read the story in USA Today, which had two stories that were posted Monday night and ran in Tuesday's print edition. One was a feature on Regina Holiday, who I did mention, about her painting, trying to call attention to lots of problems of patients getting their data. But I went off on USA Today about their other story, in which they they said that without saying meaningful use, that the meaningful use program, the health IT incentive program, was part of Obamacare. No, absolutely frigging wrong, 100%. Meaningful use, the EHR incentive program is part of the High Tech Act, which was passed as part of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, the stimulus bill that was passed a year before the Affordable Care Act passed. And unfortunately, I don't think we can have an honest, informed debate about healthcare reform in this country unless people know the facts. And Obamacare, frankly, is a loaded word. People feel one way or another strongly just by hearing that, and some people will even say, oh, this is great, this is Affordable Care Act, but no, Obamacare is horrible, not even realizing that they're the same thing. Well, Obamacare is not the same as the High Tech Act, and I just think this oversimplification in the mainstream press, and by extension in the general public, is making it extremely difficult to get beyond the sound bites and to get beyond the headlines and actually talk about real healthcare reform in this country. And I think USA Today did a huge disservice, and they're not the first ones to do this, but little guys like us have to get out there and write the truth.
We're like Tic Tacs, Neil. We're small, but we take your breath away. So we're very potent.
Exactly.
But here. So what percent here? Just ballpark it. What percentage of people really get and understand the differences and nuances between Obamacare and the other issues in healthcare?
Less than 10. Less than 10. In fact, I would say that 90% still don't see Obamacare as anything more than just health insurance coverage. And there is more in the Affordable Care Act than just health insurance coverage. But you mentioned Obamacare, and they'll start talking to you about insurance coverage.
Yeah, socialized
and
healthcare.
And insurance is not the same as care. And having insurance does not guarantee you good care. It just means that somebody else will pay for it. And we can't address the major problem of medical error in this country. Medical error is the third leading cause of death in the United States. We can't address that problem if we can't don't even acknowledge that it exists.
You know, it's so funny you say that too, and I think that's the sad legacy right now. I mean, this kind of dovetails into policy,
Yeah,
is that we can't get to the nuance because I think that,
yeah,
and I think Kaiser Health News had a great story about this a few weeks back. I mean, there's actually a consensus around Obamacare on left and right that
yeah,
the law itself is way too complicated to be truly effective, and
probably.
you know, if we can get past the constant attempts to repeal it and then the knee-jerk reaction to defend it, and then actually get into the weeds and begin to peel off pieces of it
Yeah,
that are too complicated for patients to use and execute and find the federal funding and to maneuver it through it. And the same thing with the health insurance industry and the medical industry and others. If we could continue to refine the policy rather than just take these polarizing views, healthcare would be much better off. I mean,
I agree.
I think entrepreneurs as a whole um, are ambivalent about Obamacare because I think entrepreneurs will often simply ask this: what is the box I have to play in? Box being policy.
Yep.
Okay, now I know it. Now I'm going to go play in that box. I think what entrepreneurs hate, and of course they're going to feel, gosh, I wish that box was a little bigger, or a little smaller, or a little this, a little that. But once they know what that box is, they're going to go ahead and they're going to do it. But unfortunately now, the one thing entrepreneurs hate is the inconsistency. All right, here's the box you're going to be in today, and here's the box you're going to be in tomorrow. And I don't know what the box is, but I know it's going to be different 3 days from now. Entrepreneurs have a lot more trouble doing that because they can't innovate consistently. And entrepreneurs are great at pivoting, but pivoting can be death. And so I think that's the frustration, is that we really have a box that we can play in here, and it is not perfect, and it's too confusing, and there's a lot of consensus around those key issues, and we've got to get past getting the machetes out, and we've got to get our whittling knives out, and we've got to get this thing down. And so, and yeah, USA Today doesn't help, but it's symptomatic of a problem
Exactly.
of a lack of nuance universally when it
No,
comes to
I
this.
agree.
Hold
I
on,
agree.
I'm getting off my soapbox, so I'm going to see that.
I haven't gotten off of mine yet. I haven't gotten off
Yeah.
of mine. I'm absolutely passionate, and you probably could tell in my voice that how passionate I am about patient safety, and how big of a problem medical errors are. I was surprised, though. I used to believe that Congress only had the political will to touch Medicare once a decade, but the fact that they did repeal the SGR this year, 5 years after passing Obamacare and 12 years after passing Medicare Part D, tells me that maybe there's finally consensus that something has to be done, even if we can't agree what has to be done. At least we acknowledge that something has to be done, and that maybe twice a decade is a little more realistic.
Yeah. That's well said, and I think that's what
Yeah.
we're going to walk off with. Neil is about to get on a jet plane and head to the D.C. area, and you should watch his coverage as well as Stephanie Baum's coverage
Yeah.
of Health Data Palooza next week. On behalf of Neil Vercel, sitting in the American Airlines Admirals Club at O'Hare Airport, I'm
Ballin'.
Chris Sepper at Ballin, and I am not ballin' in Cleveland, Ohio, although the Cavs are. I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope you've enjoyed MedHeads, and I look forward to talking to you all again next week. Take care.
Thank you.